I was discriminated against my entire life because of my golden child sister. She now tried walking down the aisle at my wedding, and I finally got revenge. From the time I was born, my parents always favored my sister over me. It was not a subtle thing either. They would always take her side and punish me whenever she blamed me for something. They would never listen to me, even if I had clear evidence. They would always find a way to make me feel guilty and give her a lighter sentence. She got to choose the flavor of my birthday cake. I had no say in hers, and my parents pretended they did not know I hated that kind of cake. They always got her more things than me. We always did what she wanted, even if it was supposed to be my day. My sister was spoiled and mean. She used me as a punching bag whenever she felt like it. But at first, she mostly left me alone. That changed when we became teenagers. I don't know what happened, but she lost all her friends and became worse. Did they move away? Did they dump her because she was nasty? I have no idea, because we were never close, and my parents only praised her achievements and never talked about her problems. Unlike with me, they always made fun of my flaws as a joke. I only knew she had no friends because we went to the same school and I saw her walking by herself. She was friendless. I was not. I was pretty popular. My sister saw that, and suddenly, I became her enemy. She started to make up more lies about me. She started to badmouth my friends. My parents stopped letting me hang out with anyone. The reasons ranging from, "Your sister says they are bad people," to, "Why do you want to leave us? Why can't you be like your sister and love family time?" The only thing that saved me from total loneliness was my relatives. Most of my family lived in the same town, and I got along with my cousins even though they were not my age. At one family gathering, they asked me to join them for something. I don't remember what, and I sadly said I was not allowed to go anywhere. When they asked why, I blurted out that it was because I could not have friends since my sister had none. That got to the adults, who apparently gave my parents a piece of their mind. Later, I was yelled at for lying and grounded, not that I had anywhere to go for a month. But after that, they gave me some freedom, so it was worth it. And my sister switched schools. I guess she was embarrassed that the family knew she had no social life, and she demanded to change, and my parents agreed right away, even though it was more expensive since the school was farther away. But she made friends at the new school. However, she never went back to the old way of ignoring me. I guess she liked the feeling of making me miserable, and she was mad that I told the family she had no friends. My life was still awful. Her friends would come over and harass me, and my parents said it was harmless teasing. I never invited friends over, because my parents were rude to them, or my sister would accuse them of stealing stuff, and they would believe her. I did become close to my cousins though, since my parents never dared to do that to family. And then I got my first boyfriend. I did not want to introduce him to them at all, but my parents insisted. Well, at one point we were apart, and he came to look for me to tell me my sister was hitting on him. He meant that she came over with revealing clothes, fluttering her eyelashes badly, and telling him how awful I was and how great she was. He was annoyed and ran off to look for me. Of course, my sister told my parents a different story, that my BF had tried to make a move on her, but she rejected him since she would never do that to me. Guess who my parents believed? I'm not saying my BF was flawless, but I trusted him right away for a nasty reason. But you have to understand that I was a teenager back then, and I was going through a lot of injustice. I was bitter and angry, and I despised my sister as much as she despised me. With that said, let me tell you about looks. I didn't bring them up before because they didn't matter. My parents are obese, and since they expressed love through food, giving you extra portions, buying snacks, etc., my sister is also obese. While I am not. Actually, I've always been kind of thin because punishment often meant no sweets or treats. Of course, weight is not what counts. Personality does. But my sister was already mean and spoiled back then. Even her flirting skills were awful because she never had to work for anything since she could ask, and my parents would give. On top of that, she didn't look like some hot model, so even my insecure teen self didn't think my BF would cheat on me with her. Anyway, my parents forbade me from seeing such a terrible boy. I did try to continue in secret, but it was difficult, and the relationship ended. I did find another, but my sister again claimed he was flirting with her when he rejected her moves. My parents believed her again. I tried to show them how this was a pattern, but they concluded that I was unable to make good decisions and kept choosing bad boyfriends. The relationship couldn't survive the Romeo-Juliet situation and died out again. I would later be called a slut in high school, as I was okay with hooking up with boys and such, but avoided relationships. Luckily, it never reached my sister or parents. My sister did have one boyfriend during all this time. He was shown off with pride, and my parents spent every moment telling me how great he was, and why couldn't I be like my sister and find myself someone like that, until he disappeared, and suddenly he was a scheming jerk that fooled my sister. Oh well. The unfairness went on at this time. She had more pocket money, her deadlines were much better than mine, she could go wherever she wanted whenever she wanted while I couldn't. If I complained, my parents would say it's because she's older. But when I got to that age, I still didn't have the same privileges she had. And when I brought it up, they'd either say they never said that, or say it was because I wasn't as reliable as she was, using my sister's lies about my BF and friends as evidence of my poor choices. Time passes, and my sister is about to graduate. She got into a college, not a very prestigious one, and she had no financial aid or anything. Again, because they only told me about her successes, I don't know which colleges she applied to, so I can't tell how badly she failed. I do know her grades were low in school though, because whenever she got a B, we would have a party. I would usually get high grades, but my parents wouldn't make a fuss, saying since I always got those, what was there to make a fuss about? My parents, of course, made a big deal and told her they'd cover everything. I was glad she'd be leaving, not that it improved my situation. She'd always come back every other weekend, and somehow things would go missing from her room or some other problem she'd invent to ruin my life. My deadlines were still tight, etc. Eventually, my mom came to talk to me about my upcoming graduation. I'm only a year younger than my sister. She told me since they were paying for my sister's college, they had no money to pay for mine. So it would be better for me to start working right after graduation and wait until my sister finished uni to see if they could spare something for me. Oh, and if I chose to stay at home, I'd have to pay for all my stuff, some of the bills, and rent. I mentioned I could get student loans. Mom said yes, but no. That is, because they cared so much about me, and I had such bad judgment, they would decide if a college was worth me getting into debt or not. I'm not sure how they'd prevent me from getting loans, but I didn't ask. They never brought up scholarships. They had no clue what my grades were anymore, and never trusted in my abilities. Anyway, I didn't blink an eye. I just said okay. My mom clearly didn't see that coming and kept pressing. Maybe she wanted me to have a meltdown so they'd have a reason to not ever pay for my college. But I said nothing except, I got their point, thanked them for being concerned, and that was it. My dad later attempted the same, but I also stayed calm. You see, after a whole life of their awful parenting, I never had any hopes for my education. I knew they would come up with an excuse to not pay for mine and make my life hell. I never thought they would ever pay it if I worked and waited for my sister to finish. I had been getting ready for college for a long time. I could hardly go out, my friendships were thin, so I had a lot of time to study. And study I did, because I saw college as my only way to be free. But then the time arrived, and I worked hard to get a scholarship. Not to anywhere like Ivy League or anything like law or medical school. But it was a good enough program, in a respectable college, with a full scholarship. Knowing my sister would loathe it and try to stop me through parents, I posted my achievement on social media at the same time I told them. Even made myself thank them in the post. Now they couldn't stop me from going, as they'd have to justify to family why not. At first, they were even a bit proud and bragging about it. And then, I guess my sister got to them, and they switched gears and even asked me if I was sure I wanted to go. They let slip my sister wasn't doing well in college, and since she was smarter and had better judgment than me, I'd do worse. I obviously stood my ground. They weren't happy but couldn't do anything. College was my salvation. I started being happy. I still kept in touch with my parents and visited on holidays and such, but since they refused to pay for anything, I could excuse not going a lot due to money. During this time, I avoided bringing any man to them, and my sister dropped out of college. I know she didn't graduate because, again, they'd have made a big deal about it. Moved back home, paying no bills or rent, but it's different, my parents said, and started working at the same company as my mom, obviously thanks to my mom pulling strings. This was all presented to me as a source of pride. Oh well, almost done, I swear. I met my husband around this time. You know those people that say that if I was in X situation, I'd have done something? My husband is the kind that actually does. I'm the person that is timid and a pushover in any situation, and then lies awake at night wishing I had done something, had thought of something clever to say, etc. I'm the person that can't help but cry when I'm mad. My husband is the guy that snaps back right away. He loves drama in that he loves to solve it. He's the guy that if he doesn't instantly respond to an insult, you better start panicking because he won't let it go. He's just brewing something worse for revenge. He's the one that wanted me to post here, and wanted to post on a nuclear revenge board too, but decided what we did wasn't nuclear. People were puzzled I got together with him, But just because I was unable, thanks to my upbringing probably, of behaving like him, it didn't mean I didn't like it. I love that my husband does what I can't, and he treats people well as long as they do the same to him. When we talked about marriage, we decided we didn't care much about the ceremony due to our budget, as we'd rather spend on a dream trip to Europe for our honeymoon. As for where to do it, since his family was scattered, and mine was still mostly in my hometown, we decided to do it there. We weren't living too far away either, so we could take some long trips during the weekends to handle stuff. Plus, there was some work flexibility, so we could stay in my hometown for a bit too if needed. We sent out the engagement announcement and the save the date for a few months later. Well, at this point, my parents naturally insisted they meet my man. I wanted to grow a backbone and decline, but was having a hard time. The distance had made me think maybe my parents weren't so bad. Well, my husband looked like I ruined Christmas when I told him I would at least make sure they were never alone with him. See, he had been preparing for this. He even bought a high-quality recorder he could hide in a pocket to record it all. He was thrilled, thinking of all the ways he could reject my sister's moves, mock her, and then spread the recording of her attempts to my family. So, off he went alone and eager to meet them, and came back later ecstatic. Babe! Babe! You won't believe the horrible shit they wanted! Babe! There are so many ways to screw them over! I was perplexed and wanted to hear the recording, but he, wisely, told me it was better to listen to him first, or else I'd misunderstand him. Well, he went there, and instead of the flirting, my parents and my sister sat him down. After some mumbling about not being okay with him, my judgment, etc., they declared they were willing to pay for my wedding, on one condition. My sister would walk down the aisle on my wedding first, in a wedding dress. Their reasons were that it wasn't okay for a younger sister to marry first, so it was only fair if my sister had at least the experience of it. On my venue, with pictures being taken, and the dress, and she'd have a cake later too, etc. My husband will now write his part. Hey! Vengeful husband here. Hell hath no fury like a pro-revenge / instant karma / nuclear revenge lurker when his sweetheart is wronged. That said, as much as my wife, she's my wife now, portrays me as this quick-witted guy, I admit my neurons all but fried when those folks legit proposed that, like some sort of great prize. Even Troy would rather accept the horse a second time, I reckon. Alas, after my brain restarted, I did have a whole ass list of slams about to burst out, but something in my soul whispered in my ear like the devil, string these along. So I said I needed to think, see how my wife, back then fiancé, would feel, and then dashed out of there before I could reveal my wicked plans. Back to me, the wife. So, my husband honestly told me how my parents wanted even my wedding to be about my sister, with a smile on his face, and had the recording to back it up. I was stunned. The distance had eased how bad they treated me, and I thought even they wouldn't go that far. Thankfully, my husband insisting on the angle of revenge helped me not go to a bad place. We had a blast thinking up ways to screw them over this, from absurdly outrageous to what we thought was doable. We then called his much more sensible brother when we decided on a plan. It involved having 2 venue addresses, giving them the wrong one, etc. Well, sensible brother scolded us for it. While he admitted he would never be able to dissuade us from retaliation, he at least showed us something like that would be hard to pull off. Some of our other ideas were also at risk of getting sued, so we eventually settled for the most harmless plan. Pretend like we agreed, but then hire security and don't let her in. Obviously, if that was all, it wouldn't be pro-revenge. The rest is all mostly my husband, by he wants me to do the honors, so here goes. Just important to mention, everything he did was previously discussed with me, and were our mutual ideas. He went back to my parents, said he poked and thought I wouldn't be okay with it. However, he didn't see the problem, and, not wanting family to break up, would be down to helping them do it. He argued that I don't like confrontation, so if I was caught off guard with it, I might not make a scene in front of all the people. On the other hand, marriage is a big deal, so who knew if I'd lash out? So he suggested a compromise. They'd help pay for stuff. This way, I would feel even more pressure to not say anything, as not only would we be public, well, with our families there, but I'd be thankful to the help they gave, and that'd calm me down. He said my parents looked surprised by my grown sister starting jumping with joy, literally so, like a child. So it was agreed. Important. My husband also claimed that due to some bad judgment in boyfriends in the past, these words were all my idea, and I'm so proud of using their words against then LOL. I was suspicious and controlling and liked to check his phone and stuff to make sure he wasn't cheating on me. As such, It was crucial that nothing of this plan was ever put in any writing. For any discussion related to my sister walking down the aisle before me, he'd go over to their house to talk. And so began the months of deception, where my parents and sister thought they were fooling me, and my husband and I were exploiting them. How? Well, rather than pay for the wedding then stay quiet, of course my parents wanted input in everything. Some stuff that mattered a lot to me, the songs and color palette. My husband would persuade them to let it go to keep me in line. But since we never really cared for the ceremony to start with, everything else was fair game, or so they thought. What we did was this. We'd go, say, to check the drink and menu options. We'd then choose the lowest or second lowest priced option. My husband would then secretly take my sister there to also try it out. Then sigh and say, "It's a shame we don't want to take advantage of my parents' generosity so we wouldn't get the best options." Cue my sister demanding my parents pay for the best. My parents would then tell me not to worry, and they'd pay for the most expensive. Same was done with photographer, flowers. My husband gave my sister a bouquet of the flowers we wanted, then sadly expressed how I wanted some other tasteless flowers. Cue my parents telling me they wanted us to go with said flowers and they'd pay for it. Wedding dress. We hit a minor bump here. My parents wanted me to use a horrible dress. Okay, not outright horrible, but it wasn't my style and wouldn't look that good on me. We had planned on saying yes then, simply not using it, but my mom sent me a message about it. So there'd be proof I said okay. We had to go with me refusing in text and holding my ground. My husband went over there and said he'd see what he could do. My sister suggested ruining my desired dress, so I'd be forced to wear the other one. He pretended to agree. During all this time, they really kept communications outside any text. We made sure that it happened by, when my sister tried messaging my husband, have me reply to her. This solidified the "I'm controlling and neurotic" claims my husband was making. So they believed it and never risked anything in writing. And maybe some people might not like the thought of their partner going around and talking badly about them to family, but I'm such a pushover that the thought of being painted as this controlling and dangerous bitch is extremely funny to me. And I egged him on to do it. I guess I have a twisted sense of humor, lol. Oh, and my sister did try to flirt with him, but he acted conflicted. Also, to really convince them that he was on their side, my husband would act like he was telling them things behind my back, but he never told them we hired security. It was hilarious. My husband and I, who had honestly thought about a courthouse wedding to focus cost on our honeymoon, having this lavish, costly wedding and hardly spending a penny. We called it compensation for emotional damages from my parents. I think my husband, okay, he just confirmed I'm right, lol, was having more fun with the whole fooling them than planning our wedding, lol. I didn't think it was possible to see a guy smiling at the idea of wasting his whole Saturday doing a car trip to talk about wedding details with his in-laws, but here we are. Soon the day came. The plan my parents/sister/husband had made was wait until everyone was seated. Since the bride always comes out late, they'd have my sister show up at that exact time to prevent me from seeing her and trying to stop it, and walk down the aisle. By the time I found out what happened, it'd be too late to do anything. As for my dress, we kept some of the leftover fabric from my dress alterations, and my husband took that to my parents' place, sister still lives with them even now, and showed them as evidence he'd ruined the dress. Then said he had to go back to me as I was fuming, and he needed to calm me down. He'd see them at the wedding. We made sure to keep our actual security hidden at first. As the guests and my parents arrived, all they could see was a woman with a list of names to check. Only after my parents arrived and sat down did we bring out security, a guy that looked like a bodyguard. We told him to not let anyone my sister in, and even agreed on paying a nice tip if he didn't disclose. We told him that. Soon the time arrived. My parents got a text my sister was less than 5 minutes away, so my dad went and told people to start. My bridesmaids had been told to follow his lead beforehand, so they complied without checking with me. After they all went down and took their places, my dad stood up at the entrance, as if waiting for me. During this, a friend not in the wedding party texted me to get ready. This because if my husband or bridesmaids etc. took out a phone and started texting, people might notice. This friend was in on the plan. She's my husband's friend, as eager to help stir drama as he is, and didn't care about being a bridesmaid or anything. Well, as soon as my dad took his position, the bridal song started playing. The doors open, and I come in. My dad looked shocked at me being there. He tried looking behind me, but you can't see the venue entrance from where we were, so he couldn't see what happened to my sister. And then his phone rang. I saw the caller ID, and it was her. He just left me there with a muttered "something came up." There were shocks and chaos all around. The friend in on it loudly asked what happened. I lied and in a weepy voice said he told me it wasn't supposed to be me there. It's not what he said, but my husband and I agreed that if he dared leave me, I should say that to make him look the worst possible. As for the tears, I wish I could say it was just my amazing acting, but no. Despite everything, a part of me didn't think he'd go that far and leave me there. That the sister thing wasn't real but a complex prank. I don't know. I was hurt, still am, so I was honestly trying not to cry. The friend then loudly went, "What did he mean by it shouldn't be you?" So that as many people as possible could hear and spread it, then went, "I will go and check," and ran off. We decided to do this to make her create havoc with the security and stop my dad from coming back and stopping the ceremony or something. At some point, my mom also left. At this point, my husband's dad quickly ran over and took my arm. He'd been warned he might need to. Watching him run eagerly to me helped me smile. I walked down the aisle to whispers as people talked about what happened. Some apparently left to check too. When I reached my husband though, all was well. He made me feel better joking my sad face was so real I deserved an Oscar, and don't worry, he dragged them over the coals for what they did LOL. We got married without a problem. My parents didn't come back. I did notice a lot of people leaving then coming back during the party, but no one dared tell me what was happening. Someone did come and whisper in my husband's ear, and he went out. He came back after a while, with a furious expression, but whispered in my ear he needed to go hide somewhere before he broke character and started smiling lol. Well, what happened is it worked. The following is the summed account from friends, family, the security guy, and my husband that I received afterwards. My sister did show up in a wedding dress. The security denied her entry. Per our agreement, he claimed she must be at the wrong venue because there was already a bride. And yes, we tipped him really well as promised. My dad went there and tried threatening him with police, claiming he never knew him, so he couldn't be working there. The security agreed to the police, since he was hired by us and doing his job. My dad realized by then it'd be too late and tried to demand he let my sister in. The friend came over and started yelling and mocking my sister and asking what was happening, basically delaying. My mom soon arrived and eventually other people. At this point, the wedding plan was ruined. All my parents could do now was damage control, as everyone that found out about it was appalled they'd try and pull it and shouting and scolding them. The three naturally said it wasn't a secret and threw my husband under the bus. At this point, my husband was called. When he came over, he put on his best look of bewilderment and denied. To quote him, gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. He denied ever agreeing to something so absurd. When they persisted, he did. He demanded evidence. And of course, they couldn't provide any. All text exchanges they could provide were about normal wedding choices. My sister was shriek crying and apparently sat on the floor kicking her legs like a child. My dad looked like he'd hit my husband, but security and other people restrained him. Of course, they said they had no evidence because my husband told them not to text. My husband laughed and said, "Wow, how convenient, huh?" Then again repeated, why would he ever agree to something so wrong? Ripped them a new one about being terrible parents, then said he wasn't going to let their dumb plans and lying interfere with his wedding, and went back to me. No one believed them. The venue had cameras, but they refused to show me the recording as that was only for security reasons. But some people recorded parts of it. Watching my parents and sister get torn apart by any and everyone that came out to see the drama was delightful. After years and years of being blamed of stuff and not believed, to watch them have a taste was one of the best wedding gifts. My mother was crying. My dad kept changing from purple to white. My sister was still on the floor crying and screaming. They kept insisting that my husband was in on it. But people kept asking, why would my husband agree? Why was there no evidence? Why did they want my sister to do this to my wedding? And they had no good answer to any of it. Eventually, they were told to leave and had no choice but to do so. My dad apparently had to drag my sister up as she refused to leave the ground. No one spoke to me the whole night. I suppose they were trying to be considerate. And maybe it was because I was the bride and not just a guest this time, but it seemed like everyone was extra nice, upbeat, and enthusiastic about everything. My husband says the pricey stuff they were stuffing their faces with definitely helped. We had a lot of fun. My husband kept up the fake angry face for a short time before he couldn't help smiling again. After that, we went to the hotel to get some rest before our honeymoon. By the way, my parents did offer to pay for our plane tickets, but we declined because we thought they might try to cancel them or something. Of course, since that whole thing, the three have tried to reach me. I ignored their calls because my husband wanted to have a paper trail. A smart move, because my sister did send me a message eventually. I won't say what it was because it was very crazy and nonsensical, but the main point was that she blamed me for her embarrassment, called my husband a double-faced snake that tricked them for months. He wants to frame that and hang it on our wall, LOL, and wished, but also assured me it'd happen, that he'd cheat on me. She also implied he was cheating on me with her, actually. My husband took my phone, screenshot the call logs, screenshot my sister's message, screenshot some messages of my parents demanding I answer the phone, and sent it all to my family group chat, and sent screenshots of messages to him where they insulted him and threatened him. But he kept saying, "You're delusional, I never agreed to anything," and even threatened to sue them for defamation and harassment. He wrote a message in that group chat pleading with my family for help, as I was now being harassed by them non-stop. He pleaded with family to help stop them from trying to ruin my honeymoon after they failed to ruin my wedding. Then he ended neatly with a request that they don't share our locations, to avoid my parents sending my sister over, and then claiming he had somehow agreed to pretend to sleep with her in our honeymoon suite. My family told him they'd handle it, and indeed, since then, we've had peace. My husband is a bit sad my sister didn't disobey, so he could snitch again while ripping her a new one. We'll see if it'll last. All in all, while I obviously would have liked to have a normal, loving family at my wedding, at least for once in my life, they not only failed to ruin something important to me, but I got back at them. Extra info. Why do they treat me like this? I've heard this question a lot, so I guess you all will wonder the same. I have asked myself this all my life, and I still have no clue. I tried asking when I was young, but they denied any difference and scolded me for being spoiled, so I stopped trying. I've considered many possibilities, but based on my observations, I think it's this. I was an accident. They struggled to have my sister, so she was not only desired, but also like a miracle child after so long. However, given our age difference is quite small, I think they didn't anticipate to have a kid so soon or easily, and didn't use proper protection way too soon after my sister's birth, and maybe didn't realize my mom was pregnant until too late, so they were stuck with an accidental baby while still dealing with a newborn. And they're not that rich, so having the extra cost probably didn't help. So they hated me, but that's my guess. Regardless, I've accepted the answer won't really matter. What they did to me was unjustified, no matter what. Did they honestly think this would work? My husband and I talked, and we have the idea that they never intended to do this at all. We think my sister had a meltdown over me getting married first when she hardly gets dates, and they gave my husband that ridiculous proposition. As in, they didn't want to pay for my wedding and didn't think we'd agree, or that it'd even look good for them to do it. But by offering it and being rejected, they could look like the nice guys to my sister while having a reason to not give me a penny. But then my husband agreed to it, and they couldn't back out, or else risk my sister turning on them.